They called it a joke, a harmless prank, something they'd laugh about years later. But Noah didn't laugh. Not when he turned around at the rest stop and saw nothing but dust. Not when the family car faded into the Utah horizon like he'd never existed. And especially not when the sun began to set. And the gas station clerk asked why a boy with no wallet, no phone, and no plan was sitting alone on the curb. That summer, Noah was 22. He was supposed to help at his father's hardware store, live at home to save money, and endure the usual being invisible next to his older brother Elliot, the so-called golden child. They weren't rich, but their house had more than enough space for two sons, just not for one who wore a rainbow ring. It had belonged to his ex-boyfriend, a small silver band with the pride colors etched inside. Noah wore it quietly, never mentioned it out loud, but at a pit stop on their road trip to Colorado for a relative's wedding, his brother noticed. He made a comment. His father laughed. His mother Janice looked away. She didn't defend him. She didn't say a word. They all climbed back into the van, except Noah. He thought it was a mistake at first. He waited 5 minutes, then 10. The realization hit slowly, like cold water running down his spine. They had left him behind. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He stood, brushed dust from his jeans, walked to the highway like he was just any traveler who'd stopped to stretch his legs. A truck driver named Luis was the first to slow down. Mexican-American, early 40s, calm voice, eyes like someone who'd seen too much and still chose kindness. He didn't ask questions, just offered Noah a lift to the nearest town. There, Noah slept in the back of a diner for a few nights. A local cook named Callie, trans woman, sharp tongue, soft heart, took him in. She gave him a mop, then a dish sponge, and finally the place to stay. For the first time in his life, Noah wasn't someone's son. He was just Noah, and that was enough. Late one night, in the quiet of the back room behind the kitchen, Noah typed one final message to the family who'd thrown him away. "You left me on the roadside like I was trash, but I'm not staying there." And he never did. To hear more true stories of resilience, heartbreak, and healing, subscribe to Heart Story, new chapters every week, where forgotten voices find the spotlight again. Noah washed our dishes in silence. The steam from the kitchen fogged his glasses, and the scent of garlic and burnt onions clung to his skin long after the shift ended. He slept in a room just behind the kitchen, where the walls were thin and the floor creaked when he turned. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't warm, but it was his. Callie, the head chef and the owner, never asked too many questions. She called him Kid. Even though they were barely 10 years apart, Callie had built the place from scratch after being disowned by her own father. She saw something in Noah, maybe a reflection, maybe a shadow. Whatever it was, she started teaching him chopping, seasoning, timing. He learned not just to cook, but to create in quiet hours. He sat at the prep table scribbling recipes on napkins. He adapted one of his childhood favorites, his mother Janice's lemon pie, but he added cardamom and rosewater, layered it with burnt honey glaze. A familiar memory transformed into something entirely new. Callie called it trauma-turned dessert. Grayson called it television gold. Grayson was a friend of Callie's, a fast-talking, camera-loving producer with a soft spot for misfits and miracles. He had just sold a concept to a streaming network, a culinary reality series spotlighting self-taught chefs from unconventional backgrounds. He met Noah once, tasted the pie, and grinned like he'd struck oil. "This is it," he said. "You're the story." But Noah hesitated. He had no papers, no phone, no real name at least, not one he wanted to use. He hadn't spoken his family name out loud in 2 years. So he told Grayson to call him Noah Jensen. And Jensen he became the show. From scratch, began filming 6 months later. Noah wasn't the star at first. He cooked behind others, smiled politely, stayed in the background. But Callie kept pushing him forward. She said, "If you keep playing all just because they made you feel small, You'll never take back what you lost. Noah listened. Then came the day everything nearly unraveled in. Luis, the truck driver who first picked him up, was arrested during a routine traffic stop. Old immigration paperwork, a missed hearing. Within days, he was gone, deported without warning. Noah stood frozen in the alley behind the diner, the weight of another goodbye crushing his chest. He didn't speak, didn't eat, didn't cook. He packed his bag, planning to disappear before dawn. But Callie blocked the doorway. She didn't shout. She just said, "Don't vanish like they hoped you would." Noah stayed, and that week he filmed his first solo episode, a tribute to Luis, grilled corn with lime crema and smoked chili, served beside a memory pie. The network called it raw, vulnerable, unforgettable. Ratings surged. The Noah Jensen name trended on cooking forums. But behind every plated dish, there was silence. He never spoke of the family that left him behind, not once. He was no longer the boy at the rest stop, but the bruise was still there, just under the skin. Fame crept in like morning fog, quiet at first, then everywhere. Noah didn't chase it. He barely acknowledged it. But From Scratch became a hit. Audiences connected with his recipes, his stillness, the way his food spoke when he did not. Noah Jensen became a household name without ever revealing the name he was born with. It was during a segment shoot in New York that he met Julian. The network had partnered with a local animal shelter for a crossover event. Noah was supposed to bake dog-friendly treats for rescue pups. Julian, the shelter's lead veterinarian, arrived late, hair damp from rain, holding a soaked clipboard and apologizing with a tired smile. He was nothing like the men Noah had known. There was no bravado, no performative charm. Julian spoke softly, listened intently, and had a way of looking at Noah that made silence feel full instead of empty. They met again once by accident, then by intention. Coffee turned into dinners, dinners turned into weekends. And slowly Noah let himself rest, but not enough to speak of the past. He told Julian he'd moved a lot, said he had no close family. He didn't lie, but he didn't tell the truth either. Julian didn't push, not when Noah flinched at holiday decorations, not when he declined invitations to meet Julian's parents, not even when he refused to talk about childhood. Time passed, steady and kind. Then came the night Julian proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet evening, a shared bowl of lentil soup, and a ring placed gently on the table beside a folded napkin. Noah said yes, with one condition: no family, he whispered. I want it small, just us, quiet. Julian nodded. He didn't ask why, but someone else did. Grayson, now Noah's closest friend and producer, was furious. This is the wedding of the year, he argued. You're the most beloved chef in America, and you want to hide it like a backyard barbecue, Noah insisted. But Grayson had spent years building stories from pain. He understood wounds. He also knew how to turn healing into a headline. So, without telling Noah, he pitched the wedding as a culinary love story to a major streaming platform. They approved the coverage, hired a camera crew, branded it as a live special, The Wedding Table, starring Noah Jensen. And when the official announcement went out, complete with a press release and promotional images, Noah's face was everywhere. But it wasn't the public that startled him most. It was what came after. Emails, comments, and then a letter. His mother's name in the subject line. No message, just an old family photo attached. Noah stared at it for hours. The image showed him as a child, standing by the porch, holding a lemon pie. In the background, Frank, Janice, Elliot, all smiling, all looking elsewhere. He didn't reply, didn't respond to the follow-ups. But every night after, he woke with the same question burning at the back of his throat: why now? It started with a headline: America's beloved chef Noah Jensen to marry in televised ceremony. By noon, it had gone viral. By evening, the emails had begun, and by morning, the past had found its way into his present. His mother, Janice, was the first to reach out, not with an apology, not even with words, just a photo. Then came the messages from Elliot casual, pretending to be supportive. "You've really done well for yourself. Little bro, maybe we could talk before the big day." Followed by a longer message from Frank, full of phrases like "water under the bridge" and "every family has its moments." None of it said what Noah needed to hear. None of it admitted what they had done. So he ignored them. He stopped checking email, asked his assistant to screen all incoming messages, told Julian the pressure was getting to him, half-truths to keep the peace. But they weren't done. 2 days before the wedding, they showed up. It was Callie who first spotted them through the diner window. 3 figures standing awkwardly on the sidewalk, Frank in his old work jacket, Janice holding a trembling clutch, Elliot dressed too well, too clean, like he'd rehearsed. They asked to see Noah, said it was important, said they were here to make things right. Noah stood behind the kitchen door, listening. His heart didn't race. His hands didn't shake. What he felt was quieter than anger, something colder, distance. Callie didn't trust them. She offered to speak with them instead. They refused. So she listened from the hallway while they talked. And that's when she heard it. Elliot's voice, too loud. "If we get this on tape, some gossip channel will pay a fortune. Cry a little. Say something about forgiveness." Janice muttered something in return. Something about keeping it tasteful, emotional, but not too heavy. And Frank added, "Just enough to make us look like a real family." Callie froze. She had seen manipulation. She had lived through betrayal. But this was something else, rehearsed grief for profit. She waited until they left. Then she told Noah everything. He didn't yell, didn't break down. Instead, he walked into the dining room, picked up 3 wedding invitations from the reserve stack, and wrote their names in elegant gold ink. The next day, they arrived at the venue, a sweeping outdoor garden tucked into the base of a national park, Julian's dream. Camera crews, florists, chefs preparing the menu Noah had designed himself. And in the front row sat Frank, Janice, and Elliot. Perfect posture, faces neutral. Noah hadn't told anyone what he was planning, not even Julian. He smiled, he nodded at guests, and when his family thanked him for letting them in, he said only, "You should see the view from here." They didn't know the cameras were watching them too. Didn't know the contract Noah had signed with the network included a clause. Any attempts to exploit private moments or manipulate public sympathy for personal gain would result in permanent blacklisting and potential legal action. They thought they had fooled him, but they were the ones being filmed now, not just by cameras, but by every pair of eyes in the audience. And Noah, he had no plans to expose them. He didn't need revenge. He already had something better. Control. The sky over the canyon had turned soft gold by the time guests took their seats. A breeze moved gently through the wildflowers arranged around the altar, and the hum of cameras faded behind the music. This was Julian's dream venue, a national park nestled deep in the hills, far from cities and noise. But today, it was Noah who stood at its center. Not as the forgotten son, not as the quiet boy left behind, but as the man everyone had come to see. The ceremony was simple. No extravagant entrances, no dramatic pauses, just 2 men standing side by side holding hands. Julian spoke first. His voice trembled as he thanked Noah for teaching him what patience meant, what healing looked like, and what it meant to build a home from scratch. He promised kindness. He promised presence. And he promised never to walk away, not from a hard conversation, not from a bad day, not from Noah. Then came Noah's turn. He held Julian's hands, looked into his eyes. And for a moment, he said nothing. Then he turned not to the audience, not to the cameras, but to the front row, to Frank, to Janice, to Elliot, and slowly, calmly, he spoke. "I was never the son you wanted, but I became the man I needed without you." A hush fell over the ceremony. No gasps, no whispers, just silence. Frank stood abruptly, his face red, fists clenched. But before he could step away, two security staff approached quietly and asked him to follow them. No conflict, no scene, just an exit. The cameras didn't follow him. They stayed where Noah had asked them to, on the altar, on the love, on the story that truly mattered. Julian placed the ring on Noah's finger. Noah did the same. They kissed, and applause rose, not just from the crowd around them, but from living rooms across the country. Because this wedding wasn't just an event, it was a reckoning, a reintroduction, a declaration that chosen love can be louder than inherited silence. But the final moment wasn't scripted. It wasn't in the program. It came just before the broadcast ended. Grayson, ever the producer, had prepared something quietly with the editing team. A short clip, a memory. It played just after the ceremony, projected onto the large screen behind the reception space. There was no sound, only ambient music. But the image was unmistakable. Noah, years ago, sitting alone at a gas station bench in Utah, same face, younger eyes, waiting, hoping, and finally, walking. The camera had been a security feed, retrieved later by Grayson. A moment frozen in time, a boy abandoned, a man reborn. As the video faded, a message appeared in white across the screen. You don't have to go back to the family that lost you, just build the one that won't. The reception began. Callie and Grayson stood to the side, wiping tears before they turned toward the food tables. Guests laughed, danced, and celebrated. But Noah stayed still for a moment longer, hand in Julian's, watching the last rays of sun disappear behind the cliffs. He hadn't just survived, he had arrived. Have you ever had to choose between where you came from and who you've become? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Heart Story, where real healing begins, and every voice matters.